Hey guys, I'm excited because I get to talk today about all the upcoming fall releases in September and October. One of my favorite things to look at what's coming out and see what I will really want to read. I sifted through a lot of different books that are coming out. I looked at articles and looked at upcoming releases on barnesandnoble.com, and I was trying to find everything I can possibly find in multiple genres just to narrow it down to, I did get it to 15 new releases that will be coming out that I will most likely be reading. And it's also one of my favorite times of year. I love fall, I love Halloween, and I think it's a perfect time to read thrillers and horror too. I even have my Salem Witches shirt on in celebration, and maybe Amanda can make some kind of like fall leave, fall Halloween type thing happen right now.
Hey guys, it is currently for me August 29th. It's a Tuesday, and Jen and I have been reading some good books. The sequels to these books are coming out this year, and we have decided that we would like to discuss our most anticipated releases for September and October. Now, we did do a most anticipated releases video in July for the last half of this year, so if you haven't seen that yet, then check it out. I will link it up here in this corner. But those books, although we still are anticipating the releases for them, our most anticipated has changed because, for example, we read Fourth Wing. If you haven't seen that vlog, I'll post it up here. And the second book in that series is coming out in November. We're not going to be talking about that in this video. This video, we're just doing September, October, but that's just an example of a book that we did not have on our radar in July, but is now on our radar. We also, the sequel to Divine Rivals is coming out the day after Christmas, December 26th. So that is also a most anticipated, again, not talked about in this video because we're just doing September, October, but the point is that our lists have changed, and we want to share with you guys the books we are most looking forward to being released in September and October. Now, I am currently at my library. I am waiting for it to open. It's not open just yet. It's very early in the morning. And the reason I'm here is because I tried to Google 2023 fall book releases, 2023 anticipated book releases, 2023 upcoming book releases, fall book releases, and I just cannot find a single list. I've gone to the Barnes and Noble website for new releases, but mixed in all the new releases is like paperback releases, and that's really not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for brand new books coming out in September and October. So I've had a hard time finding just one list in one location of books coming out. If you know of a website or any kind of publishing online that list all the books coming out, maybe by month or by season or by quarter or something like that, where I can just get a list, that would be great. I would love to hear from you. Please put it in the comments below because I really appreciate that list. I do have Elduis, and they have arcs that for books that come out, so I can look at that. But again, it's like really tedious going through this whole list and trying to figure out, what's hardcover release, what's paperback release, what's brand new, what's going to be, a big hit, what's going to be something I'm interested in. So I am at my library because very long explanation for why I'm at my library, but I'm at my library because I know that they have a magazine that gets published every month that talks about upcoming releases. So I am hoping to get my hands on one of these magazines. It is a free publication they just have out at the library, so I'm hoping to get my hands on one of those, and I can thumb through it and take a look at different books coming out. I know that it is categorized by genre, so it'll be really easy. Like, I generally don't like general fiction or contemporary fiction or literary fiction. That's really not my favorite books. I can quickly go to my category. I can go through all of the books that are going to be released. I can find the ones that appeal most to me and I can share them with you. So that is what I'm hoping to do. As soon as this opens, we're going to go inside and see if I can get a copy of that magazine. Here it is. The magazine that shows fiction books coming out this fall. As you saw, I was able to get my copy of Book Page, and this is a free magazine at the libraries. It's put out by Penguin Random House, so it's all of the new, well, I wouldn't say all, but it's probably the biggest upcoming releases from Penguin Random House. Unfortunately, it wasn't a lot of help for me because I already have heard about most of these books and they're not on my most anticipated, but I did do some more research. I went online. I ended up just going to different publishers' websites and looking through their upcoming releases. So far, Macmillan Publishers has the best website that I have looked at for this, and because you can separate it by genre and you can separate it by new releases, and then they're in order. So, and I didn't find any like paperback releases. These were just true new releases upcoming. Also, Macmillan Publishers has an imprint called Tor and Nightfire. Both of those imprints have been so good. Tor, I think, mostly does fantasy and Nightfire does horror, but I have been getting ARCs from both of those imprints and I have been loving all of the books that they've sent me. So really excited about that. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 8 anticipated releases coming out for September, October, and I'm gonna go through the list here and let you know what my picks are.
So the first one on my list is September House by Carissa Orlando. It's a debut novel. I believe it's going to be a hardcover. It sounded perfect for the fall Halloween type vibe. The quote from Goodreads is compulsively readable, twisty, and layered debut novel. And it's about a woman determined to stay in her dream home even after she finds that it's haunted. Every September, the walls drip with blood. Ghosts of former tenants are appearing everywhere, and something lurks in the basement. So it's definitely something that sounds what I would read, and I'm still in the mood for it.
First, on September 5th, the September House is coming out. I know that this is a book that Jen is also anticipating, and I'm just gonna throw it in here real quick because I don't want Jen's books and my books to be the same. I want you guys to get a bunch of different books. So she is doing this one. I just want to note it because it's a debut author, and I'm always loving debut authors. Like, obviously your favorite authors, you always anticipate their novels coming out, but it's always good to find new authors that you love their books and you can anticipate their books coming out in the future. So the September House by Carissa Orlando is coming out September 5th. Just a short blurb about this. I know Jen's already explained it. So a woman is determined to stay in her dream home even after it becomes a haunted nightmare in this compulsively readable, twisty, and layered debut novel. So really looking forward to reading that one.
I always feel like I get into periods of time where I just get kind of tired of the thriller or horror, and then I mix it up and I try and read something else. Sometimes I'll read a romance. I've read fantasy, but sometimes I go back to my first love, which is a segue to The second one on my list, which is called The Vaster Wilds by Lauren Groff, which comes out September 12th. And this is a historical fiction. I have yet to read Lauren Groff. I got this off of Goodreads and I tried to get into her new release from last year, which was called Matrix. And it was a historical novel like this one is, but I just wasn't at that time in the mood for a historical novel. This one is about a colonial girl who escapes a village and she's trying to survive, obviously, in the wilds. And it's a survival tale, and it's during a time where she didn't have any resources. It's not like there's a cell phone or anything that she can really use to communicate and get to somewhere safe. So it's going to be really interesting, I think, to read a book that has that premise. Try and go back to fiction. It's always been what I read in the beginning. I only really read fiction and literature fiction, and I got sucked into psychological thrillers somewhere along the way, and I feel like I end up reading those way more than I do fiction anymore. So I try and go back to my roots and read something that will help me get right back into thrillers again and make them exciting again, because after a while they do get they just feel like the same after a while. So I'm going to be reading this one. I believe I might even do a ARC review, and I might do do an ARC review for this one. The third on my list is The Collector by Laura Cat Young. It comes out September 12th, and this one sounded very crazy because it's a frightening dystopian horror, and it's where grief is forbidden and purged from the mind, a nightmarish mix of 1984 and Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. And I hope I didn't butcher that name. But Never Let Me Go is a Nobel Peace Prize winning novel. I didn't get a chance to read that one, but of course 1984, everyone knows pretty much 1984, and it just sounded kind of like the movie with Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, which is called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's one of my favorite films of all time, and in that movie it's about deleting memories that you don't want to have anymore. And this one sounds like, how were they deleting the grief from people's minds? So I don't know what kind of mind control is going on, but it sounded different. And it's a new paperback release. I always love to read paperbacks over hardcovers, so this sounded like a perfect one to put on my list. I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to read it. Obviously, some of these aren't on my September TBR, but it's going to go on my TBR for some time in the future. Another new paperback coming out is The Graveyard Shift by Maria Lewis. It's September 12th, and it's a fast-paced, thrilling murder mystery novel paying homage to slasher films of the 90s. And the only 90s film that I can think of that's like a slasher thriller is Scream. I was trying to rack my brain earlier and I didn't Google it, but that's the only one that came to mind whenever I read this. So I'm not sure if Scream is involved, but that would be pretty cool because I do like that movie. This one also grabbed my attention because it said perfect for fans of Riley Sager, which I just read my first Riley Sager and loved that book, and Grady Hendrix, which is also another author that I love that writes horror. So in this book, someone is murdered live on an air of a radio show. And at first, the radio show host thinks that it's a Halloween prank, is what it said, but then finds out that it was very much real. And the murderer strikes closer and closer to around wherever she is in terms of people that she knows. And this one just sounded really interesting to me, so I put it on my list for what I would love to read coming out. The next one is a new hardcover called The Stranger Upstairs by Lisa Matlin, and it comes out September 12th. It's a therapist and self-help writer who buys a Victorian house, and she is renovating it, and more goes wrong with it, and she starts to wonder if it's possibly haunted. she learns more, she continues to renovate, but starts to lose her sense of reality. And it gave me very much Yellow Wallpaper, Charlotte Perkins Gilman vibe. And I think I want to say it was very much, there's a lot of haunted house, I feel like, on my on this list. And maybe it's just because of the time of year being fall and Halloween season, but that seemed to be very much a theme on my list. So I was trying to mix it up with some fiction. It's one of the other reasons why I was trying to find some fiction in my list. But this one sounded really interesting as well. So I am most likely going to pick it up when it comes out.
Next, on September 12th, I just want to mention Fall of Ruin and Wrath by Jennifer L. Armentrout is coming out. It is a new fantasy romance. I received an ARC. I've already done an ARC review on it. I will link it up here if you're interested in that book. It was really good fantasy romance. I'm not a big romance reader, as you guys know, but sometimes I do love the fantasy romances. I'm starting to get into them a little bit more, and this one was really good. This is the only Jennifer L. Armentrout book I read. So I do want to pick up some of her other series that she's come out with, just based on how much I enjoyed A Fall of Ruin and Wrath.
Next one sounded super interesting because I never heard of this author, and she was listed as being a mega best-selling British crime novelist that's making her big American debut. And her name's Kara Hunter, and the book is called Murder in the Family, and it comes out September 19th. And how they described it was an immersive thriller written as the teleplay of a true crime documentary. And you get, I don't know how it lays out, but it says that you get photos, maps, and coroner reports, and you're trying to solve the case, I think, before they do. Though it doesn't really make sense. It almost sounded like it would be an audiobook, but it was listed as a new paperback. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but it did sound like a very different kind of book. And I was also interested because she's a mega best-selling British crime novelist. I guess she's like the James Patterson over there, even though I don't read James Patterson. I just thought it would be an interesting book, and I put it on my list for the rest of the year.
The next date of releases is going to be September 19th. I have 2 books I want to talk about coming out on September 19th. That is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. And this is a YA fantasy novel. I've not been really big into the YA lately, but Divine Rivals was YA fantasy, and I loved that book. So I am anticipating this one coming out. You're following Effie, and I'm just going to read a quick little blurb about it. Effie's favorite author passes away, and his family announces a contest to redesign his estate. She enters the contest and must defeat other contestants. So it says this is part historical fantasy, rivals to lovers, romance, and a gothic mystery. So this has a lot of elements that I obviously love. The fantasy element, of course, but there's sort of an enemy to lovers trope. There is the dark academia feel. There is the contest, which everyone loves a competition in their fantasy novel or dystopian novels. So really looking forward to that one. The next book coming out on September 19th that I'm anticipating is not a book that I would typically go for, but I just thought this book looked so funny, and that is Starter Villain by John Scalise. This is a humorous book, and it's a humorous mystery thriller slash book. I guess technically it's technically listed as humor science fiction. So do with that what you want. It kind of reminds me of that kids movie with the Minions, Despicable Me. It reminds me of Despicable Me. It's giving me those vibes. So I'm just gonna read a little snippet about what this book is about. Charlie is in a rut, and then his uncle dies. He inherits his uncle's supervillain business. Jake has instant enemies that start coming after him. In a dog-eat-dog world, be a cat. So there you go. You got some supervillains. I've never read John Scalise before, but it says that he has some very popular books out, and I am looking forward to that release.
The next one I also have an ARC for, and it's called And Then She Fell. And this one's by Alicia Elliott, and it's coming out September 26th. It's going to be a new hardcover, even though my ARC is a paperback. I do prefer paperbacks, but a lot of times new things come out in hardcover, and I'm impatient and can't wait, so I end up buying the hardcover. So this one sounded, again, different from anything that I have read. The way, like the September House is definitely, the very beginning one was some, like that would be very similar to anything else I have read. But I'm trying to find things also that's different than what I normally read. This one is a mind-bending, razor-sharp look at motherhood and mental health, following a young Indigenous woman who discovers the picture-perfect life she always hoped for. Alice feels alone, a new mom in a posh neighborhood in Toronto. She married a white professor who happens to teach about her own Mohawk culture. She becomes increasingly distressed. It says it's an urgent and unflinching exploration of inherited trauma, womanhood denial, and false allyship. And it speeds up to an unpredictable and surreal climax. And I think it's very interesting, especially when the description says that she married a white professor who happens to teach about her heritage. And it just sounded uncomfortable just to read about. So it just wonder how that would play out and what exactly is going to happen. Sometimes I avoid these books because I just feel so bad when I'm reading them. It's not always comfortable to read these kinds of stories, but I also feel like necessary to read about other cultures and see what happens when they're put in situations that we may not always think of every day. I thought it was another, I don't think this is psychological thriller, though it has some of, it would probably be considered a literary thriller, and those I also really love to read. So I am probably also going to do a ARC review of this as well, because I haven't done any ARC reviews like Amanda has, and I have these two, and I think it's perfect to do these, though I didn't put them on my TBR for September. But as we all know, we end up kicking things off our TBRs anyway. Next is one that we had on our mid-year review of the upcoming releases for this year, and it's Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. It comes out October 3rd, so now I'm officially in October. And Ashley Winstead happens to be the author of our first vlog, The Last Housewife. She also wrote In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. I haven't read that one though. So Midnight is the Darkest Hour is a new hardcover. It's for fans of Verity and Flicker in the Dark. I loved Verity. I didn't read A Flicker in the Dark. But this one says it's a twisted tale of murder, obsessive love, and urges that hide in all of us. I don't know exactly what that means, but a skull was found, and a local legend of the Low Man, a vampire figure, is blamed. So there's local legends involved in this, and it also says it's an examination of the ways people depend on religion, love, and stories to save us. The other thing I said when I talked about this one in back in the other video, there was a quote in this review I always think I had thought that was interesting, and it says, "The monstrous work of being a girl in this world." And I talked about it in the other video too, but I felt in The Last Housewife she really touched upon that subject about how hard it can be a woman or a girl in this world, and everything that everything that we end up having to fight and watch out for, especially when it comes to men. Women are the ones getting murdered most of the time. So I think she's really trying to say something in the books that she's choosing about what women have to deal with in this world. The cover's really cool too, which I'm sure Amanda has put on the screen by now so you can see the cover as well. The next one was really interesting. I know a lot of movies and TV shows, and I don't know how much this has happened in books. Not as much, I don't think. But there always seems to be a return to the previous and redoing it. Going back to old TV series, going back to movies and redoing them. There was just the new Indiana Jones that come out. There was a lot of TV series that were rebooted. And now they're going to reboot Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, and it was authorized by Shirley Jackson's estate, and it's called A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand, and it comes out October 3rd. It's a new hardcover, and the premise for this story is about, it stays with the house that was in The Haunting of Hill House, and it's about a struggling playwright who receives a grant for her play The Witching Night, and she needs a place to, or needs a lot of space, I guess, to rehearse her play and develop her play. So she invites everyone that's going to be in this play, and a lot of strange things, of course, start happening. I didn't read this of Shirley Jackson. I'm a huge Shirley Jackson fan. If you guys have watched any of our other videos, I feel like I bring her up a lot. But I did watch the Netflix series Haunting of Hill House, and I loved that series. I thought it was really well done, and it didn't exactly play out that way in the book. It was inspired by Shirley Jackson's book. But I am very curious to see what this is, but I'm probably going to read Haunting of Hill House before I would read this one. Just back to back would make sense for this one. So the next one is a new hardcover, also coming out October 3rd. It's called Edenville by Sam Rebeline. It's a debut horror from a new voice for fans of Paul Tremblay and Stephen Graham Jones. I haven't read either of those voices in horror, but I've heard a lot about both of them, and a lot of people rave about both of them. I just haven't had a chance to read them yet. This one's a blend of gothic, cosmic, folk, and body horror, which is a really strange mix. So that's interesting. And this one is about an author who has a book called The Shattered Man, and it doesn't go well. He has disappointing sales, and he's trying to follow that book up with something that's actually going to get him on the map. And someone from this college in Edenville invites him to do a fellowship or a residence up at this college. His girlfriend, named Quinn, is from the area, and it's said that she has reasons to not go back or to ever want to go back, but somehow she ends up going back with him. And I think there was a reason why pull this author to him, and it obviously seems for nefarious means. So it sounded really interesting, and I have that on my list for October.
On October 3rd, there are 2 upcoming releases that I am anticipating. The first one is called After the Forest by Kel Woods. And I just have to say right off the bat, I am not a fan of this cover. I don't like this cover. I would normally not be interested in this book if it was solely based on the cover, but it is a retelling. It's a fantasy book that is a Hansel and Gretel retelling. So the quick summary that I put together for you guys for this one says, 20 years after the witch in the gingerbread house, dark magic returns to the woods, and Greta and Hans need to find their own magic to save it. So I really love the Hansel and Gretel children's story fairy tale, and I'm looking forward to reading this one. I think this has some really good potential to be a great book. The next book that comes out on October 3rd that I'm anticipating is The Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. And this book, I first noticed this book because it was in an ARC giveaway on Goodreads, and I entered. Of course, I didn't win that one, but I've been intrigued by this book ever since. It is a fantasy horror novel, and you're following a girl named Opal. And the summary I put together for you guys is Opal is trying to get her and her brother out of their town of Eden, Kentucky. She gets an opportunity to go inside Starling House, which is the house of an author that disappeared over 100 years ago. In this house, she encounters dark forces and decides that she may have to stay in Eden to fight them. So you're basically following this girl. She's trying to get her and her brother out of Eden, Kentucky, but she gets trapped in there by a spooky house. She's got a mission now, and I can't wait to read about it.
So I just want to do a shout out for Last to Leave the Room by Caitlin Starling. It comes out October 10th, and I gave it 4 stars. Me and Amanda, she will put the link right above my head again. We did a vlog for it, and I was very intrigued by this book, and I felt it was very original. I hadn't read anything like it, and I would say it's mind-bending. It was a very interesting ride to read this book, and I would recommend it for you guys to check it out, coming out October 10th. It's considered speculative horror, but you can just check out our vlog and get more information on that one. The 12th book on my list is called The Leftover Woman by Jean Kwok. It comes out October 10th, and it's a new hardcover. And she also did Searching for Sylvie Lee, which I didn't happen to read. And it's a propulsive family drama about how a recent Chinese immigrant and a publishing exec intersect in shocking and affecting ways. So there's a woman who leaves China, and she is looking for the daughter that was taken away from her. The publishing exec is the one, I think, that adopted her daughter. And her life is also falling apart, though they don't really say too much about why her life is falling apart. But the other woman is going to New York, I think is where it is, and it ends up being seemingly explosive as to what happened. It seemed really interesting, and I feel like it's also a literary thriller, which I'm trying to get more fiction and not just do thrillers and mystery. So that's why I put that one on my list.
The last book that I am anticipating in the month of October comes out October 10th. This was on our most anticipated video that we posted in July for our most anticipated novels coming out the last half of this year, and that is Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. Now, I've only read one Cassandra Clare book, and I didn't continue the series because I just sort of lost interest in it. It was YA. This is her adult fantasy debut novel, so I'm very excited for that. So in this book, you're following two outcasts, Kel and Lynn, and I love a ragtag band of people that come together, or outcasts that team up together. I just love that trope, so I'm already excited. But you're following two outcasts, Kel and Lynn. They find themselves at the center of a world-altering change in the start of this new fantasy series. So that's the blurb that I found on the website, and then a little bit more information I found. There's an assassin attempt that brings these two together. They discover dark secrets and conspiracy corruption, and then they have to fight to keep their country out of a war. So, sounds amazing. I know Cassandra Clare is a wonderful author, and I can't wait for that to come out. Let me know if you guys are also anticipating these books, and let me know if you've received an ARC and you've read them. Please let me know your thoughts.
The next one is by the author of a book I've wanted to read. I still want to read it. I don't have it physically yet. I've wanted to buy it. It's called Spells for Forgetting, and this author also has done YA novels. One of them is called Fable, and this one is called The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. And it's a mixture of romance, mystery, and magic, which again is something a little different than what I normally read. And I thought that would be a great diversion off of some of the same things I keep reading. So this one is about a woman who risks everything to end her family centuries-old curse, solve her mother's disappearance, and find love. The main character is June, and she starts getting cryptic clues regarding her mother's disappearance. So she goes on an adventure. And what's funny is, in the description for this book, it mentions, I think it's part of the curse, but it mentions a door that suddenly appears, which is part of the other book that I just mentioned. A plot point of the book Last to Leave the Room by Caitlin Starling, and I just thought it was really interesting that that was coming up again in another book. I was like, what is that new device of a door just suddenly appearing? So that one I have on my list as well. I am a huge fan of Lisa Unger. I love her books. The two that were my favorite are Confessions on the 745 and Under My Skin. They're both psychological thrillers, and I just feel like she is compulsively readable. I just love the way she writes. So there's a new one coming out on October 24th, and it's called Christmas Presents. And it's about a woman who has survived a murderer, and a true crime podcaster is trying to get information from her and trying to solve it because he doesn't believe the person in jail is who really did it, since there's more girls missing and there's more murders that seemingly are tied to this person. And I feel like that premise has obviously been done before. A book isn't coming to mind right now, but I feel like that's a very, very similar premise for a lot of books. But with Lisa Unger, I just love her so much that I haven't even got a chance to read everything by her. But this one I'm most likely going to read. It's a novella, so it's probably not even that long. But I definitely plan on reading her when it comes out. And last but not least is a huge surprise, I'm sure, for anyone watching, because it's nonfiction. What? And I have read a lot of nonfiction that I love, and the nonfiction I have read isn't necessarily similar to this one, but I asked Amanda about doing this because I really want to read this book, and I said we really should do a vlog because I want to read it so bad, but I think it'd be interesting to talk about. And it's Britney Spears' new memoir called The Woman in Me, and it comes out October 24th. And I think most people know what Britney has gone through, and I'm very curious to see what she says about it. Not just about the conservatorship that she was under and she got out of in 2021, which was 2 years ago now. It seems like it was only yesterday where that was in the news. But I'm curious to see what she says about growing up, getting into the entertainment industry, everything that she's gone through. And it seems like she went through a breakdown in 2007. If she says anything about that period of time, everything that she's gone through with her ex-husband and her kids, and then up to present time with everything that has happened with her family. And I have been a big Britney Spears fan. She became popular when I was in college, and I am a pop music fan. The truth comes out. But I feel like it would be very interesting to read from her perspective, from her mouth, because there's so much gossip out there, and she just seems like she's been through a lot, and I would love to hear what she has to say about it. And that one we will be doing a vlog for, and I'm sure that will come out either end of October or early November, so I'm looking forward to that. We're probably going to do November, December releases, maybe beginning of October or something like that. I'm not sure yet. We were going to do the whole half of the year, but it seemed like there was already a lot that we wanted to talk about. I mean, I had 15 that was just for 2 months. So are there any that I didn't talk about? I can think about one that is a huge release coming out, but I haven't really read Stephen King. I know that's crazy because he's like so known, especially for horror. I read one book by him, and I'm forgetting it, and it's not one of the known ones. It's not it or any of the big ones that he has. He has a new one called Holly coming out in, I think it's October, might be the end of September, and it's a character that he's written about before, so I don't want to read something where I would want to read whatever he wrote beforehand. But if there's any that you are excited about, either the ones that we've talked about, or if there are ones that we didn't talk about that you were like, why didn't you include insert? So look forward to us talking about these in future either vlogs or recaps or TBRs. And until next time.